Hi guys, welcome back to another exciting video. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. I sat in front of my new dorm room first day at college. I can do this, it's fine, I'm okay. You can do this, I whispered to myself. Ida and Ochako insisted I'd be fine. When I learned their dorms weren't near mine, I reach out and open the door. I walk in and see my new roommate, who jumps up to greet me. Hello, I'm Ijiro Kirishima, the dark gray-haired kid said, shoving his hand out to me. I grab it and mutter, Izuku Midoriya. He smiles hugely and sits back down on his bed, starting to ask questions, simple ones like favorite animal, colors, sports, if I could cook, even if I found my soulmate, which I sadly had to say no to. He seemed pretty nice though. Time skip. I had learned a lot about Kirishima and he seemed like a pretty nice guy. Turns out he can see color. His soulmate is a guy named Denki Kaminari. The way he talks about him was amazing. I guess that's what it's like to have a soulmate. I hope that I can find mine soon. I decided to meet up with Ida and Ochako at a cafe near campus. We were sat in there talking about our roommates. Ida was with a guy named Denki Kaminari and Ochako with a girl named Tsuyu Asita. They all seemed to really like their roommates. It was cool that Ida's roommate was mine's soulmate. Everything was good until he came and I looked over to see the kid Bakugo Katsuki. He tormented me throughout high school. I had recently learned that he was going to the same university. He spotted me and walked over, a cocky smirk on his face. Hey Deku, he said. Ochako glared at him while Ida looked away. Ochako called me Deku, but she meant in a much nicer way than Bakugo. What do you want? I whisper. For you to crawl in a ditch would be nice, he said. Let's go, Ochako said, getting up. She may look nice on the outside, but she wasn't one to put up with Bakugo's crap. I stood up with her and Ida. I was about to walk past Bakugo when he grabbed my arm. Leaving so soon? He said. I tried to pull my arm away, but I wasn't strong enough. He tugged on my arm before letting go. Ochako immediately asked me if I was fine. I always answer yes, always. I just don't understand why he decides to pick on me. I never did anything to him. We were even friends when we were young. He just started turning to teasing to full on hurting me. I just wanted to stop. I head back to my dorm. I lay down on my bed, thinking about Bakugo. You good? Kirishima asked. I nod into my pillow. I turn my head over to look at him. Well, he said, smiling. I raised my eyebrows. A bunch of kids are having a party to start off the year. Wanna go? I think, why not? I said, smiling. Later that day, Ochako told me she and Ida were going. It was going to be much easier at the party. Now I'm not the best in social situation. Soon it was 8 and Kirishima and I decided to head out. I was wearing a plain gray shirt with black jeans and a pair of white Converse. We walked down a couple streets until we found an old apartment complex with a bunch of bright lights on a few floors flashing bright white and light grays. Todoroki's dad owns a bunch of estates, Kirishima explained. I nodded. Todoroki was the kid that was throwing the party. We head inside and I'm immediately met with my friends and their roommates. Asui insisted I call Hitsu, while Denki had a bit of an electric attitude. They both seemed extremely kind. Ochako went straight to the dance floor. I went into a corner where I found a chair. I hung out there until Ochako came up to me yelling about a truth or dare game going on. She dragged me into another room where there was a circle formed with a bottle in the middle. I noticed mine and my friend's roommate, Kirishima, with his arm around Denki, but I also saw Bakugo. I stayed quiet about that though. Hopefully there won't be any trouble tonight. I sat down while Todoroki, whom I just met, explained the rules. If the bottle lands on you, whoever spun the bottle gets to ask truth or dare. It was pretty fun so far. Denki had to scream his most embarrassing moment out the window. I crapped my pants in 2nd grade. Ochako had to admit she thought she could fly until she was 6. Todoroki had to find a random girl and compliment her awkwardly. A girl found out she had nice sized socks. A girl named Kyoka had to sit on Denki's lap for the rest of the game. Both their faces were turned a dark gray. Everything was going fun and fine until the bottle landed on Bakugo from a girl named Ashido, who I could tell was a fujoshi. I stared at Ashido when she said her dare. Everyone else was laughing and looking at each other. They were excited to see where it was going. I dare Katsuki to kiss the kid across from him. I didn't know what to do when she pointed at me. Bakugo groaned, not wanting to go through with it, but knowing his pride he wasn't going to forfeit. He stood up and walked over to me. I saw Ochako glare at Ashido, but she didn't care. Soon Bakugo was standing over me. I started to panic. I gulp as he stares down at me. He bent down, whispering, I'm gonna kill you after this. He then leaned over and pressed his lips against mine. They were warm. I then seemed to hear almost a snap in my head. A bunch of colors swarmed my vision. When I opened my eyes, Bakugo seemed to notice because his eyes widened. He parted fairly quickly. Right after he opened his eyes, he walked back and sat down, and I caught him looking around the room. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The colors were so overwhelming. I tried to figure out which colors were which. I could figure out which were which. I saw red, blue, green, a bunch of other colors. I then realized that I shouldn't be focused on the colors. I looked across the room at Bakugo. How was he my soulmate? He was horrible to me. I saw his catch my gaze. He then mouthed, outside, now. I saw Bakugo get up and leave the circle. Everyone too caught up in the game to notice. After a bit I got up and left. My friend didn't notice me leaving, which was probably good. I went outside to where I found Bakugo leaning against the apartment building's wall. I walked up to him not knowing what to say. I look up to him, he looks down at me and gets up from leaning. What do you want to do about this? Bakugo asked. What do you mean? You see these colors right? He said, motioning around himself. I nodded. He rubbed his forehead in annoyance. I stare at him. We never got along. Why would we be soulmates? What the heck was the universe thinking? So, how are we going to deal with this? He yelled. I shrugged. This was all happening so suddenly I could barely process that Bakugo was my soulmate. Come on, he yelled. So are we going to be together or not? I stared at him, then I realized how obvious this was. We are soulmates, so we'd have to start getting along. I guess we are soulmates, right? I said, looking at my feet. Ugh, he whined. So what should we do? He said, putting his hands in his pockets. I don't know, is it supposed to be this awkward? Bakugo laughed at my comment. I smiled. Usually he laughs at me, not with me. He looks around. Wanna get out of here? He suggested. Sure, and do what? It was like 9:30. I don't know. He looked at me. I shrug. He shrugs also. He looks behind me. He then abruptly grabs my hand and starts to run, dragging me behind him. I run behind him quickly. Where are we going? I half yelled, laughing. I was so caught up in the moment I couldn't help but laugh. Anywhere. Bakugo yelled back. I stared at the back of him as we ran. He was wearing a navy blue tank top and pair of light brown trousers. It was really interesting to see these colors. I didn't know why he was being nice to me all of a sudden. Was it because he found out we were soulmates? So if we found out longer ago, then would he have been nicer? I thought of that as we ran. Soon we had ran over a mile. He stopped when we made it to an empty bridge. He sadly let go of my hand. I looked back at me. I sat there gasping for breath. I wasn't used to running that much at once. You need to get into shape, he said, laughing again. I smiled up at him. He then sat down near the edge of the bridge. Putting his legs through the railing, I sat to him, doing the same thing. Why'd you drag me here? I asked him after getting my breath back. Your friends came outside and I wanted to talk with you, he said, looking up at the sky. I looked up. Also, our college was near a woods, and that was where the bridge is. The sky was especially starry tonight. I put my hands behind my back and leaned backwards to look up better. So I said, not wanting to sit in silence the whole time. Bakugo looked over at me, a sad look on his face. It's fine, I said, cutting him off. We should just put everything behind us. How about? I told him if this was going to go well, we need to not worry about the past. He nodded. I'd like that, he said, smiling widely. He then took his hand and put it over mine. I flipped my hand, overlacing my fingers with his. He leaned over towards me and I leaned towards him. He gave me a kiss. He sat these kissing me. I kissed back right away. Soon he pulled away, though he stayed by my face though. Our noses almost touching. He just stared into my eyes. I couldn't stop looking at his. They were a deep shade of red. I can't look away. Now I'm starting to understand why the universe put us together. It was the next morning. Classes started today, and I was nervous but at the same time excited. It was all those feelings that you get during the start of school. I felt extremely happy, though last night was still on my mind. Seeing color is amazing. Everything seems so much brighter, probably because I can see yellow and neons. I got ready, throwing on a shirt I learned was green and a pair of black jeans. My first class. I spotted Bakugo almost immediately. He waved at me and I walked over and sat next to him. I spotted Ochako staring wide-eyed. I just shrugged it off. Hey, Bakugo said when I sat down. Hey, I respond. Class soon started. It was American history. We went over basic things we learned in high school. Sometime in the middle of class, Bakugo grabbed my hand. A slight blush crept to my face at first, but soon I got comfortable with it. Ochako noticed me blush and wouldn't stop her staring. My next class, Bakugo wasn't in it. Ochako was in it, though Ida was in much higher classes, so I didn't think he was in any of my classes. Ochako sat down next to me. She stared at me still. What? I asked. Hey, could you tell me what color this is? She said, pointing to her bag. I automatically said, purple. She threw her hands in the air. I knew it, she exclaimed. I mentally face-palmed, realizing what I had said. I forgot she couldn't see color. I can explain, I said, holding my hands up in defense. I figured it out on my own, she said proudly. You two found out during the game. Then you guys sneaked away to do you know, she said, getting quiet. What? No, I yelled, getting the attentions of some kids. We just found out yesterday and nasty. Okay, she said, slightly suspicious. I shook it off. Of course she was thinking like that. But Katsuki, out of anyone in the world, you ending up with Katsuki, she said. I was surprised too. But he's not that bad, I said, quietly blushing. Looking down at my feet. Class started then though, so our conversation ended. I went through my next classes, not really talking soon, though I had finished my classes for the day. Later that night I got a message from Bakugo. Bakugo, wanna get dinner tonight? Deku, are you asking me out? Bakugo, maybe I am. Deku, then yes. Bakugo, I'll pick you up at 6 then. Deku, okay, where are we going? Bakugo, Endeavors. Deku, I'll meet you outside my dorm. I laid down on my bed smiling. I was going on my first date with Bakugo. Why you so happy? Asked Kirishima when he got back to the dorm and saw me smiling at nothing. I have a date, I said plainly. Oh wait, I thought you didn't have a soulmate, or are you just going out? He asked. Well, I found my soulmate at the party yesterday, I said happily. Ooh, who was it? Kirishima asked excitedly. Katsuki Bakugo, I said proudly. He's cute, Kirishima said. Don't forget his soulmate is a guy. Back off. I joked. Kirishima put up his hands. We both started to laugh. I liked my roommate. Soon it was almost 6. I put on a green button-up and blue jeans. For some reason I really liked the color green. Turns out the tips of my hair was green too. I stood outside of my dorm waiting for Bakugo. Soon he showed up. He was wearing a white shirt with a black leather jacket and a pair of jeans. He smiled. Hey, come on, let's go, he said, taking my hand. I look back at the window to my dorm room. I see Kirishima in the window giving me a thumbs up. I laugh. What? Asked Bakugo. Nothing, I said. He rolled his eyes and led me to his motorcycle. I didn't know you had a motorcycle, I said when he handed me a helmet. There's a lot of things you don't know about me, Bakugo said as he slid on his own helmet. He sat down on the seat and looked back at me as I climbed on. Well, I'm gonna have to get to know you better then, I said as I wrapped my arms around his waist. He has some muscles. I noticed he turned around and smiled at me when I rubbed his toned stomach. Easy there, he said. I laughed. He then started his cycle and headed off. I tightened my grip on him when I felt myself go back a bit. I had never ridden a motorcycle. I kept an iron-tight grip and pushed my face into his back. He looked back at me during a stoplight. Yep, perfect, I said, still not loosening my grip. Don't worry, you're all safe with me, he said. I smiled into his back. Soon we arrived at Endeavor's. We walked into Endeavor's. I was pretty sure someone in the Todoroki family owned this place. I haven't been to Endeavor's in years. It wasn't the fanciest restaurant, but at the same time it wasn't bad. It was restaurant that the chef prepares the food in front of you. It was no for flames going across the grill to cook their food. Bakugo and I go to the table and take a seat. We wait for our chef, and when he arrives we watch his routine. He tossed knives into air, made a volcano out of onions, and made a large flame that almost reached the ceiling. We then ate our food and paid. We then went back outside. Did you enjoy your food? Bakugo asked. Yeah, it was great, thank you for bringing me, I said, grabbing his hand. He smiled, gave my hand a squeeze. He then walked over and hopped onto his motorcycle. He handed me my helmet and I climbed on behind him. I wrapped my arms around his waist and started to drive. Soon though I noticed that we passed my dorms. Where are we going? I live alone in an apartment, so I was thinking we could head there, he said. Okay, soon he parked his motorcycle in a garage and then led me up to his apartment. He went through the door and took off his shoes, so I did the same. He then walked past a kitchen into a living room and took a seat on a black couch. He patted the seat next to him, so I took a seat. So what do you want to do now? I asked. I want to get to know you better, he said, turning to look at me. Like how, Bakugo? I asked. Well, how about first you call me something different? Bakugo and Katsuki sound too formal. Kaken, I whisper. What? He asked. Kaken, I said louder. He smiled. I like that, he said. Now tell me about you. Okay, well, I like green. I guess my favorite food I Katsuden, and I said. I don't just want to know you favorite, I want to know you, how you react, what you're like, what your family is like, everything, he said, looking at me from close up. I started to blush a bit. He then poked my nose. See, I now know you blush when I get close to your face, he chuckled, leaning back from me. I blushed even harder. He laughed when he saw my blush darken. Stop laughing. I sat blushing even more. Stop blushing. He laughed. I grab one of his throw pillow, throw it at him. He lets it hit his face but doesn't stop laughing. My face again. He then lays down on me, his nose almost touching mine. Make me, he smirked. Screw. I grabbed the collar of Kaken's shirt and pull him, and I smashed my lips against his. Kaken froze for a second, then started to return the kiss. I put my hand in his hair and he gripped my waist with his hands. I heard Kaken sigh into the kiss. Soon I felt his tongue slide across my bottom lip. I slowly opened my mouth and feel Kaken's tongue go into my mouth. I rub my tongue against his and I hear Kaken moan slightly. Kaken's hand started to rub my waist. I moved one of my hands from his hair and rubbed his shirt. Kaken soon took control of the kiss, but after Kaken pulled away, breathing heavily, a string of spit connecting our lips. Kaken smiled at me. You stop it laughing, I said between breaths. Kaken smiled and nodded. He gave my lips a quick peck and climbed off of me. I was breathing much heavier than him. Man, you need to get into shape, he said, his breaths becoming more normal. You're breathing heavy too. I wasn't going to call him out of shape. I felt those back muscles. Didn't expect you to be such a good kisser. Sorry, he said, smirking again. I blush and he chuckles. Ugh. I jump on him and pull him into another kiss before he could start laughing. It has been 3 weeks since I had learned Kaken was my soulmate. If I had already thought being in college was fun, having a soulmate too made everything much better. Almost every day after our classes we'd meet up and go places. Sometimes we'd go with Nachako too. Right now I was at Kaken's. Kirishima had some friends over and I had to study for a quiz the next day. I was seated at his dining table, books spread all around me. Ugh, I yelled as I threw a history book across the room. Kaken looked at me from the couch. What's wrong? I thought if I took history it'd be an easier, but it isn't. I yelled. Kaken just laughed. What's the point in learning about dead people and memorizing their 12 children's names and which one was a farmer? I rambled. History isn't fun. Kaken then walked over to the table and looked over my study guide. Come on, even I can do this, he said. I glare at him. Well, maybe you're better at some things than me, I pouted. I folded my arms and put my head on them. Kaken then rubbed my back. Here, I'll help you. I look up at him. He then walks over and grabs the book I threw. He then starts pointing out stuff for me to write down. Not gonna write everything they do since history is kinda boring. Sorry, history nerds. Soon it was nighttime, and I had a couple pages of studied notes done. My hand was cramped up from writing. Apparently, if I wrote my stuff down, I'd remember it. But I had a lot to remember. College is harder than I had expected. I move away from the table feeling a sense of accomplishment. Kaken was watching television since he was done helping me about 20 minutes ago. I sit next to him and lean on his shoulder. Tired, I look at the time under the TV. 10:32. My class was at 9. I should be fine. Can I sleep over here? I asked Kaken, not wanting to go home this tired. I had my books here anyways. I had some clothes too from a few times I had stayed over. Of course, he said, wrapping his I had my face buried in his side. I wasn't a fan of gore, and that was all the show. Are you okay? I hear Kaken. I can tell he laughing slightly. Perfect, I said sarcastically. He laughs and rubs my head. Then I hear the TV click off. I pull away from his side. I look up at him. Want to sleep in my bed? Kaken asked. I felt myself blush. Usually I stay over and end up falling asleep on the couch, and Kaken is in the bed. Do not have to, Kaken said, but I started nodding quickly. Kaken smiled. Then he jumped up and picked me up. I laugh and wrap my arms and legs around his body. As he walks to his room, he drops me on his gray comforter near the end of the bed. I look around at his room. He has a family photo on a dresser that had a few clothes draped over it. He had a bed that could fit 2 people and a closet. He sits next to me and elbows my side. Whatcha doing? He asks. Just looking. I then turn and see myself face to face with Kaken. He puts his hand on my face and leans, and he kisses me softly, and I sunk into the kiss. He put a hand around my back and pulled me closer to him. I put my hands around his neck. I sat happily when Kaken slips his tongue in my mouth. We pulled away after a bit. Kaken then stood up. I sleep without a shirt if you're okay with that, he said. It's fine, I said as I watch him peel off his shirt. I felt a blush rush to my cheeks. Kaken was very sharp feline. He didn't have giant muscles that made him look bulky, just lean muscles. I brought my knuckle up my mouth and bit it. See something you like? Kaken said. When he sees my stare, I slowly nods, and Kaken chuckled. He then walked back to the bed and put his hand on the bed. As he leans over me, he smiles as I bring my hand up and trace it over his stomach. I lean forward and kiss his chest, a light kiss. Let's go to bed now, I said. He moved away from me as I turn around and go to the head of the bed. Kaken gets in bed also. He wraps his arms around me and pulls me close. He entangled his legs with mine. We fit perfectly. As I fell asleep, my last thought was we truly were meant to be. It was almost midnight. I look over to Kirishima, who was sleeping. I look back at my phone. Kaken, lesser than 3. Aren't you getting tired? May, can't sleep. I got no class. Me neither. May, can I come over? Kaken, lesser than 3. You don't gotta ask. May, I'll be there in 20. I shut off my phone and put it in my sweats pocket. I grab a bag and shove some clothes in there. I try to be quiet. Kirishima sleeps with the lock. I leave the doors quickly and quietly. Soon I'm on the street. He buzzes me and I go upstairs and enter his apartment. Kaken's in gray sweatpants and a black tank top. He smiles at me and shuts the door. He sits down on the couch and I sit next to him. I curl up next to him. He wrapped his arms around me. I wrap mine around his waist. Wanna watch something? He asks quietly. I nod as he turns on the TV. He switches the station until I nod. When he turns on Sherlock, I watch the show for around 20 minutes before I got a bit bored. I turn towards Kaken and poke him in the side. I smile up at him. He lifts me up by my thighs and I laugh. He leans himself against the arm of the couch and I lay on him. I scoot up so our faces were closer and he moves his arms to around my shoulder. I move my face closer and kiss him softly. He smiles down at me. We haven't talked for the past 20 minutes, but the silence we had was comfortable. It wasn't awkward or anything. It was nice. I lean in and kiss him again. Kaken starts to turn away from the soft side to a bit more passion. He moves his hands down and grabs my butt. He laughs into kiss. When I squeak, I bite Kaken's bottom lip and he groans. I smile and Kaken moves his tongue into my mouth. He pulls me up closer and we kiss deeper, his tongue exploring all around my mouth. Soon his hands move under my shirt. His hands go all around my backs, feeling everywhere he could. We part for a second, then smash our lips back together almost immediately. I moan as he sucks on my tongue. Soon my shirt had come off and Kaken had pulled me up even more. He licked a strip up my neck, earning a low moan from me. Kaken continued to lick and suck on my neck, probably leaving a few marks. Uraraka is going to give me an earful for them, but I didn't care right now. I continued to moan lowly as his hands rub my side and his mouth moves along my neck and down to my bare chest. I moan as he begins to lick my chest lovingly. He moves up and bites my earlobe.
Real
He then
life.
pulls away. I
Please
stare into
play
his
in
eyes,
moderation.
seemed almost silent. I
Take
was
frequent
moaning, but it was
breaks
broken.
and play
I'm so glad you
responsibly.
couldn't sleep, he said, laughing. I smile and kiss him deeply. He turns off the TV and pulls me closer shoulder, still moving his hands up and down my back. I laugh as he runs his fingers around my back muscles. He kisses my shoulder and wraps his arms completely around my body. Cuddling into my body, I started to feel sleepy. I rub my head into the crook of his neck and give it a kiss. He smiles as we drift to sleep. I woke up on the couch with Kakin. Somehow I ended up laying on top of him while we slept. He was still asleep, so I just laid my head on his chest, listening to his heart and breathing. Soon his breathing changed a bit, and I knew he was awake. "Morning," he said tiredly. Rubbing my lower back, I just rubbed my head onto his chest. I moved my head so I could see the television. 7:31. "Come on," Kakin said, patting my back. I slowly crawl off of him and stand up tired. He gets up and grabs my hand. We walk into his bedroom. When he lays down in bed, I crawl in next to him. "It's more comfortable in here," Kakin said, tired. He closes his eyes, probably wanting to sleep in a bit. I climb next to him. I hug Kakin close, and he automatically wraps his arms around me. He places his chin on top of my head. Our legs tangle with each other's. We really were meant for each other. My head fits perfectly into his neck, his arms perfect length around my back. Our bodies naturally curved together. Cuddling wasn't uncomfortable in any way. Our knees and elbows weren't sticking into each other. Kakin held me like I was something precious too. It was hard to believe he was once the person who made my life terrible. Now he made it better than ever before. He treats me like the only person in the world, like we've been soulmates for forever. Sometimes I wish he treated me back then how he treats me now. But he's making up for his mistakes. That's what counts. Kakin holds me tighter and I hug him tighter. "I love you, Deku," he whispered. "I love you too," I whispered back. Kakin kissed the top of my head and I smiled. We spent the rest of the morning in bed. Around 10 we decided to get up and do something with the day. It was a Friday today. Also, we had all day free since neither of us had classes. I put on the clothes I brought and Kakin got changed. We had breakfast, or was it lunch? The 10 o'clock food schedule messes me up, but after that we decided to do something. "Wanna see a movie? It's the middle of the day, not too many people would be there," Kakin suggested. "Are there any good ones out?" I asked. "There's a new horror movie out," Kakin said. "Sounds like fun." I lied. I've never been to a horror movie. We ended up going to a really scary one called It. I read the book and watch the movies, and a bit of spoilers, so watch out. I'll write when the spoilers are done. P. It was so different from the book, but so good at the same time. Kakin yelled when we left the theater. I just learned he read the book last year. I was a bit surprised. It's a huge book. I wouldn't think Kakin would have the patience. "Like what?" I asked. I honestly didn't pay too much attention. I was hiding under Kakin's arm. Pennywise was a creepy moth of fluffa. Couldn't he just leave those kids alone? But then it wouldn't be a good movie. Well, Georgie's body wasn't supposed to be missing. With that, he began to go on about everything they got wrong in the new movie. And don't get me started. Still love the movie. A couple of parts he got angry, but I found it funny. It reminded me of when I get into my mumbling spouts. And don't get me started on Bill and Beverly. What was that kiss at the end? Sure, Beverly likes him in the book, but nothing happens. He yelled, getting the attention of a couple people, and I started laughing. Kakin looked over at me. "Spoilers done. What's so funny?" he sneered. I laughed again. "I just love how worked up you get on this, and you called me a nerd." I laughed. As we walked into a park, Kakin grabbed me from behind and lifted me up. Just because I read one book doesn't mean I'm a nerd. I laugh and unwrap his arms from around me. I point at him. "Nerd," I yell. He glares, then smirks. He lunges at me, but I start running. Kakin ran behind me. Through the park we ended up in a game of chase as Kakin chased me. Near the back of the park was a woods. Despite the "do not enter the woods" signs, I ran into the trees. The signs were mostly likely to prevent little kids from getting lost in the woods. I heard the snapping of twigs as Kakin still chased me. Soon there was a clearing that I came to a stop, and I leaned up to catch my breath. "Over so soon?" Kakin asked. When he walked up next to me, I nod and sit down. I didn't know the woods were this big. This park was on the edge of town, though, near the more rural areas. Kakin sat next to me, breathing slightly heavy from the running. He moved his hand and laced his finger with mine. Then we just laid down in the grass, staring up at the sky. It's been about a month since seeing it, and laying in the field right now I was staring at my phone. It was filled with messages from my mom. My mom messaged me a lot since I moved away, but the newest message made me freeze. "Search." I then wrote down the number she gave me. I placed it down on my dorm bed. I laid down. Should I even call him? I picked up my phone and stared at the dial. I slowly put in the numbers. Time skip. Hugh. I was sitting in a cafe waiting. He's late. I was currently waiting for my dad and texting Kakin. He didn't know I was here. I just told him I went out for food. I wanted to get this meal over with. I didn't need Kakin worrying about this. Soon I heard the bell ring on the door. I look over and see a tall man with black hair. I recognize him from when I was little in pictures. I raise up my hand and he walks over. "Hello, Izuku," he said once he sat down. "Hated," I said hesitantly. I hadn't seen this man since I was only 3. I had only a few memories of him. Most consisted of him and mom yelling. We then just sat there in awkward silence. "So how are you doing?" he finally asked. "Fine, you?" I asked. "Well, just great," he said. Soon a waitress came and ordered our drinks. My father just got a lemonade and I got pink lemonade. They came back in the same clear cups and the girl stared at them for a bit. I noticed they weren't marked. "Sorry, I can't see colors," she said, embarrassed. I pointed to mine. "That's the pink one," I said, and she nodded, putting it down in front of me. She then gave my father his and thanked me. "Now I should be a bit better at telling the difference," she said. I smiled. "Lighter shades when you couldn't see were harder to tell apart, but once someone points out the difference to you, you can tell the difference better." "So you found your soulmate?" he asked. I took a sip. "Yeah," I said plainly. My father nodded. "I didn't tell my father about Kakin. He didn't deserve to know about my soulmate, not after what he did with my mom. I knew the story all too well. My mother got drunk at a party. She kissed two guys. One was her soulmate and the other was my dad. My dad claimed he could see color. Who wouldn't? I did have a beautiful mom. But soon after I was born, my father accidentally kissed a woman at his work. She ran into him and fell on top of him. She turned out to be his real soulmate. He went home and told my mother. That's where most of the yelling memories come out. Soon after that, he left and moved away with his real soulmate, leaving my mother heartbroken. She told me she eventually became happy because she had me, but I knew she was still hurting." "What are they like?" he asked, trying to get info. "He's really nice, that's all," I said. "Just nice?" my father asked. "Yeah," I said. I looked at my father. He was smiling. "Why are you so happy?" I asked without thinking. "I'm just happy you found your soulmate," he said. "Yeah, at least he's my real one," I snapped. My father looked taken aback. The smile disappeared. "Son, you can't imagine how horrible I feel for what I did to your mother and for all those years." I looked at him. His face was full of regret. "But I hope with all my heart she finds her real soulmate." My gaze towards my father softened. He was a good man. He just made a huge mistake. "So why did you want to talk to me?" I asked. "I just wanted to see you again and I needed some help," he said. I looked at him. "What kind?" I asked. "Well, me and my wife," I winced at wife, "are in a bit of debt." I froze. He was asking me for money. When I told Sandra, so that's her name, that I had a kid, she broke down. She started drugs without me knowing. She's sober now though, but is in a bit of debt from bad people. My father was in real trouble. "So you want my help?" I asked. He nodded. "I don't deserve any of I stop him. I got to get to work. Thanks for your help." "Son, I'll call you," he said before throwing away his drink and leaving. Soon the check came and I paid. "I guess I'll have to get a job. I had one in high school and I made a lot of money that I was using now so I could just get a new job." I look at the counter of the cafe. There was a help wanted sign. I walk over and pick it up. "I'd like to get an application," I said to the woman at the counter. She then hands me a piece of paper to fill out. I go sit down and begin to fill it out, already knowing what to put down. I give the sheet back. "We'll call you if you get the job," she said sweetly. I smile and walk out. I decide to head over to Kakin's apartment. He wasn't home, but I had a key. He said I could come in anytime, so I did. I collapsed on his couch. What did I just get myself into? I woke up to someone poking my shoulder. I wake up and see Kakin. "Hey, baby, what are you doing here?" I sat up and leaned back. I must have fallen asleep. I look at the clock. It was past 8 p.m. I slept for a while. I still felt a bit tired though. "Just thought I'd wait for you." I stretched my arms above my head. He was looking down at me, his blonde hair falling over his face. He smirked. "Do you want something to eat?" he asked. I shook my head. I wasn't hungry, even though I barely ate today. "Have you been here long?" he asked. I shook my head. I didn't exactly know. When I arrived here, Kakin shrugged and sat down next to me. I just looked forward, not exactly looking at anything, just in a daze. My head was filled with so many thoughts at the moment. Soon I felt Kakin's hand on the side of my face, facing away from him. He turned my head and kissed me. He kissed me for a few seconds before moving away. "Is something wrong?" he asked me. "No," I lied, putting my hands up in front of me. Kakin didn't look convinced, but he just shrugged. His face turned to a look of worry. "You'll tell me if anything is wrong, right?" he asked. His hand lingered on my face, his thumb rubbing my face slightly. I moved my hand to on top of his. I nodded and gave him a smile. He flipped his hand over and grabbed mine. He brought it to his face and kissed it. Kakin didn't need to deal with my family issues. "Of course, I'd tell you anything," I said. Anything that he needed to know. I felt a bit guilty for lying, but nothing's wrong. I'm just helping my father. He kissed my hand and then let go. He smirked and grabbed the back of my neck. Kakin pulled me in for another kiss. I kissed him back. As to say I'm okay, I kept kissing him. Kakin pushed his tongue into my mouth and the kiss got a bit more heated. I moved my tongue against his and wrapped my arms around his shoulder, pulling him down on top of me. I continued to kiss him. Maybe if I kiss him enough, then I'll forget earlier. He pulled back for a second and I immediately pulled him down for another kiss. He seemed surprised, but he continued to kiss me. I wrapped my legs around his back and moved my hands up into his hair. He moved a hand up my shirt and felt my stomach. I pushed my tongue back into his mouth and he groaned. I tugged on his hair and he kissed me harder. After a few minutes, he pulled back and stared down at me. He took his thumb and wiped spit off the corner of my mouth. I smiled up at him. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked. I nodded. I pulled him down again quickly. I kissed him deeply. He pulled back for a second and I was about to kiss him again when he began to kiss my neck. His hand moved farther up my shirt. I pushed him back and just pulled off my shirt, smirked and began kissing my chest. He kissed all around my chest and onto my shoulders, sucking on my shoulders, leaving a few marks. They were on my shoulder so no one would notice. He then kissed up my neck and sucked on the lower part near my collarbone. I moaned quietly as he kissed my neck again. I unwrapped my legs and pulled off his shirt. Tossing it to the side, I then grabbed his neck and pulled him down and kissed his neck. I bit softly onto his neck and he moaned quietly. I bit until it left a small mark. I pulled back and kissed him. I rubbed the back of his neck, my thumb rubbing over the small bite mark. He pulled back and kissed my forehead. I love you, Deku, you know that, he said, kissing my face. Yes, and I love you, Kaken, I said, moving my hands to cup his face. I kiss him gently and smile at him. He then climbed off the couch. I yelped as he picked me up, bridal style. I wrapped my arms around his neck as he carried me to his room. You seem like you had a long day. Let's go to sleep, he said. I nodded and moved his chest. He soon laid me down. I climbed under the sheets as he walked to turn off the lights. His curtains were pulled back so I could see him, the street light shining slightly into the room. I smiled as he walked over. He then turned and shut the curtains. I couldn't see him until he came to the bed. He climbed in and wrapped his arms around me. He kissed the top of my head. Good night, baby, he said. He moved back and looked into my eyes. He kissed my forehead. He then put his chin on top of mine. I cuddled my head into his neck. I didn't want tomorrow to come. I didn't want to worry about money. I didn't want to worry about my father. I didn't want to worry that the people he owed would come for me. I didn't want to worry. I just wanted to stay here in Kaken's arms forever. With Kaken, my worries vanish, but they'll come back. I pulled Kaken closer and he wraps his arms farther around my back. I squeeze him tighter, desperate to be closer to my soulmate. I heard the even noises of Kaken's sleeping breath. I love you, I whisper before falling asleep. I woke up around 8 to my phone ringing. I pick it up. Hello, this is Mina from the cafe. I'm calling for an Izuku Midoriya. This is him, I said, trying to keep the tiredness from my voice. Well, you've got the job. Would you be able to start at around 4 tonight? She asked. Of course, I said. Happily, on my application I wrote my class times so I wouldn't miss any classes. All right, I'll be there for that shift and I'll show you the ropes, she said. Okay, thank you, bye, I said. She said goodbye and I hung up the phone. What was that? I look over and see a tired-eyed Kaken. The cafe near campus. I got a job, I tell him. He smiles at me. He then wraps his arms around my waist and hugs my back. That's great, babe, he said, getting out of bed. I have classes in an hour, so I got to get ready, I tell him, grabbing out my clothes for the day at Kaken's place. I had a drawer in his dresser filled with my clothes, since I stay over a lot. Me too. He walks over to me. He wraps his arms around my waist and kisses the back of my neck. I unwrap his hands and turn around, placing his arms on my shoulders. I kiss him softly before I walk to the bathroom for a shower. After my shower, I put on today's clothes and drape a towel around my neck. I pause Kaken as he goes into the shower. I grab some of his cereal and pour out a bowl, setting up a place for Kaken. When he gets out, he does take quick showers, so he comes out quickly. He came out also with a towel around his neck, just wearing black jean pants. I look him up and down and smile. He smiles at me from across the table. We ate in a comfortable silence. After eating, we look at the time. We got ready quick. Kaken gets up and grabs the dishes we were using and places them in his sink. He then comes up to me and hugs me. Why are you so huggy today? I asked him as I hug him back. Because I love you, he said plainly. I smile and rest my head on his bare chest. Are you sure you're okay? He asks out of nowhere. I'm okay. I pull back, holding onto his arms. He nods. Sorry, I just worry, he said. You don't have to worry, I tell him before I kiss him. Kaken kisses me back softly, his hands wrapping themselves around my waist. He soon pulled back from the kiss and we both sat there hugging each other. Soon we had to go and Kaken had to put a shirt on. He went into his room and later came back out with an orange shirt on. We walked out to his motorcycle. He gave me a helmet and put his own on. Kaken started up the bike and we drove to our buildings. I had psychology first. I didn't know why I took this, and Kaken drove up to some economics class. Time skipped to 4. I waved back to Kaken as he dropped me off at the cafe. I walk in and I'm greeted by the waitress I helped out the other day. Hi, I'm Mina, the manager. I'll be training you, she said, shaking my hand. Mina seemed to be a nice girl. She showed me around the cafe, telling me what was what. I'll start you off as a waiter. Over here will be where the orders will come out and the table will be written on a piece of paper you'll write. She then continues to explain my job. Around 4:30 she sent me off to work. Luckily it wasn't a busy day. I did fairly well today. I only messed up one order. Lucky for me, the customer was extremely nice about it. I worked until almost 8, said goodbye to Mina, and she gave me my share of the tips. I then walked home to my dorm. When I got there, Kirishima was hanging out with his soulmate, Denki. Hey guys, I said, laying down on my bed. They were both playing some. Hey, were you with Bakugo? Kirishima asked. Last night. Yes, tonight I got a job, I said proudly. Nice, Kirishima yelled out as he laid down cards. 2 8s. Bullshit, Denki yelled out. Crap, Kirishima also yelled, grabbing all the cards from the pile. I laughed at their excitement. Wait, don't we need 3 people for this game? Kirishima asked. Damn, I thought you wouldn't notice. Denki then looked over to me. Want to join? Kirishima asked. I nodded and walked over. I sat next to them and they redealed the cards. We played the game for almost 20 minutes. Kirishima yelled out and I laughed. We played another game where Denki once again won. He just was lucky with the cards, I guess. After a bit I know I'm going to sleep. Don't make too much noise, I said before walking back to my bed. I then laid down, falling asleep to two people in love laughing. I woke up the next morning and Kirishima's boyfriend was gone. He must have left after I had gone to sleep. Kirishima was snoring in the bed across from me as I got up. Flicking off my alarm, I had an early lecture today. I look at the clock as I get ready. 8:12, I had to be there by 8:45. In a couple minutes I was ready. Even though it was close, I still decided to leave. Why not be early? It's better than late. The lecture was on soulmates. I just wanted to learn more about them. Having recently found mine, I walk over to the building and enter the room. There was a couple other people in the room too. I sit in the back corner of the room. People slowly flooded in. A lot of them I assumed were soulmates, a lot walking hand in hand. Soon the person running the lecture came in and everybody quieted down. He started talking, and at first it was the basics. But there have been recent studies proving that soulmates have a mental connect. Almost I sat up a bit. Soulmates are somehow able to feel if the other is in distress or danger. We put soulmates in separate rooms with one not know what was currently happening. We put the knowing one with one of their fears, usually spiders or a non-venomous snake. Then we kept asking how the unknowing was feeling when the knowing soulmate was in the most fear. When the spider was on them, for example, the not know one felt off 92% of the time. The unknowing soulmate felt some sort of uncomfortable feeling. The other 8% hadn't known each other for more than 2 years. We then tried the study again, but with both of the soulmates knowing of what was happening, no feeling was felt. The fact that they knew might be a factor in the results, but this proves that almost all soulmates can tell if the other is in some sort of distress. How the connection is made is unknown. I began to zone again. That could be why Kakin kept asking if I was okay. I sat for a while thinking over that. Soon, though the lecture was finishing, I grab my stuff and leave. I walk out a bit fast. I had some classes to go to, so I try to forget what I was thinking. I don't know why I was freaking so much about this. I didn't want Kakin to know it wasn't that bad. My dad just has to borrow money from time to time. This was stressful. I quote, "am not stressed. I am perfectly fine." Soon the lessons prevented myself from thinking about the debts and Kakin. Almost right after my last class, I had to head to work. I kept working until closing. It was a bit tough though for my second night. A lot of people came in tonight, but that just meant more tips. Soon the end of the night came. Lock up, will ya? One of the employees, whose name I hadn't learned, said he tossed me a set of keys. Leave them in the flower pot outside. The magnolias. With that he left. I nodded and went back to the sweeping I had to finish. A few minutes later a knocking came on the glass doors. "Sorry, we're closed." I stop and smile. Kakin walks through the doors. "Should I not come in?" he asks. I put the broom aside. "It's fine." I walk over and hug Kakin. He chuckles and hugs me back. "Are you tired?" he asks. I nod. "I was running around a lot tonight." He then pulls back. "Well, let's finish up here and you sleep over at my place, okay?" he asks. "Sounds great." I tell him and start shutting off the lights. He then wraps his arm around my shoulder and walks us outside. I lock up the building and place the key in the pot. "Why?" he asks after I place the key. "Just doing what I'm told." I shrug. He just laughs and we walk over to his motorcycle. He hands me my helmet and we head over to his place. I hold tightly onto his chest, just wanting to hug him. Soon we arrived at his place. He grabs my hand.
I need
and leads
consumables.
me. When we get in, I go straight towards his bed. I pull back the covers, grab Kakin and push him down onto his bed. I then fall on top of him. "You're really tired." "Babe, it's only 9. Kakin laughs. I poke him in the side and he grunts. "I'm a tired working college student. Leave me be." I protest. I move my head from on his chest and face him. Kakin looked down at me. The pillow's propping him up. He cups my face in his strong hands. I smile at him. "Cute little tired boy," Kakin mutters. I giggle and Kakin squeezes my face again. He then pulls me up closer and kisses my cheeks. He moves his hands back to my back and kisses me. I place my hands on his neck as he softly kisses me. After a bit we stop and Kakin just stares at me. I place my face in the crook of his neck before I drifted to sleep. I woke up to the alarm on my phone. I hear Kakin groan as he gets woken up also.
"I need consumables."
"Sorry, I have classes," I tell him as I give a quick kiss on his neck. I slowly get out of bed. I laugh as Kakin wraps his arms around my waist. "Don't go," he muttered. "Don't you have classes?" I ask him. I turn off my alarm. 7:06. "Not until 9, he said, hugging me tight. "Well, I have one at 8. He pulls me close and leans his head up. "You look like a half." I turn around and giving him a kiss. "Love you. Love you too," I said with a smile. Room for a shower. I get dressed and grab something to eat. I then go back into the room to find Kakin asleep again. He's going to be late with how quickly he fell asleep. For being such an energetic person, he's a deep sleeper. "Goodbye," I said quietly as I head to my class. I had this class with Ochako. The next one I had with Ochako and Kakin. I walk to the building and enter the class. Everybody was talking lively since the professor wasn't there. I look around for Ochako. She wasn't here yet. I sat there. My mind wandered. I have to help my dad with money. I'm a college student. I'm already going to be in debt from school. The books were fucking expensive. I lay my head on the desk. What was I thinking? I feel a pat on my back. Rough night. I sit up and see Ochako smiling down at me. I shake my head. Just thinking I tell her. About what? She puts her stuff down. Family stuff, I say. Spill it, she said. I hesitate for a second. Ochako is my best friend, but I didn't even tell Kaken, my soulmate. I've known Ochako since high school, but I've known Kaken since pre-K. He was an ouse to me though. My dad came back. Ochako sat for a second. Oh, and he's in debt a bit and he asked for my help. I start. You better not have said yes to that douche. She yells, getting a few glances. I nod. He seemed so sorry and, Deku, you can't just forgive people so easily. He tricked your mom. He's in debt for something I'm guessing isn't good too. I forgave Kaken right away, and that ended up fine. I tried to argue. Bakugo's a soulmate, not a deadbeat dad. I nod and look down. Does Bakugo know? She asks. I shake my head. You have to tell him. No. Ochako seems to jump at my response. It's just a small thing I have to finish with my dad. I'll be fine. It'll be over before I know it. You have to tell, Bakugo, she said sternly. It's a family thing, Ochako. It'll be fine. Before she could, the professor walked in and everybody went quiet. After the class, Ochako tried to talk with me, but I ignored her, walking fast to my next class. On the way there, I ran into Bakugo. On the way, he wrapped his arm around my shoulder. As we continued to walk, Ochako glared at me but said nothing. Thank God. We sat through our class without Ochako mentioning anything class ended, and we all parted to go to the other classes we had during the day. I sped through the classes right away. When my classes ended, I had to go to the cafe. I worked hard all night. I waited. I cleaned, jumped out of the way of customers. I got an order for a drink getting made wrong. I didn't make it. I just give out the food. I don't make it. What do you think? I actually went up to the barista and asked. Hey, the guy at the back table was giving me foam. Let's forget to put cinnamon in and put foam instead. Soon, though, I was able to head home. Kaken was going out with some friends, just movies I didn't care to see, so I just went back to my dorm. When I got there, it was empty. Maybe curious. The chance to go to sleep early. I had classes again tomorrow. Today we talked about an essay. We'd get the instructions for tomorrow, so I'm treasuring sleep. College is hard. I texted Kaken a quick goodnight so he didn't wake me with texts. With that, changed my clothes and fell asleep. I woke up the next morning. I feel bad. I feel my forehead. Shit, I had a fever. Of course I get sick on a day with no classes or work. Like, why not give me a day off? I pull my blanket off as I was starting to feel extremely hot. I was beginning to sweat. I clenched my stomach. Oh crap. I dart out of bed and into the bathroom. I just made it to the toilet when I threw up yesterday's dinner. Am I pregnant? But I'm a virgin. And a male. What am I thinking? I have the flu. I lean against the wall next to the toilet, my throat hurting from just puking. I haven't had the flu in a long time, so I had no medicine in the dorm. Maybe Kirishima had some. I creep back into my room and grab my phone to text him. Do you have any flu meds? I woke up with the flu. A few seconds later, I got a text back. Sorry, Denki got the flu also, and I brought him my stuff. Kiri. Damn it. Maybe Kaken can bring me some stuff. Knowing him, he was still asleep, so I called him. A couple rings later, he picks up. Morning, he said, tired. Good morning. Do you have any flu medicine? I ask. No. Are you sick? He asks. Yeah, I'll be over soon. I'll pick some up at the store. With that, Kaken ended the call. I got such a good soulmate. I slowly go back into bed. I was feeling hot, so I pulled off my shirt and just laid on my comforter. It felt like it was 90 degrees in my room. I wanted to turn up the AC, but I knew this was just the flu. It was so hot though. I lay in my bed sweating with a pounding headache. When the hell will Kaken get here? It feels like hours. He has a key to my dorms. A few seconds after that thought, Kaken came through the door with plastic bags. I didn't know which favor you wanted, so I got them all, he said as he pulled out multiple bottles of cold and flu medicine. I laugh and point to the orange one. That one tasted the least gross. He jogged to the kitchen and pulled out a spoon and came back and poured the medicine into it. He held it up to my face. I opened my mouth and drank the bitter medicine. Medicine can never be made to taste good. I lean my head against the wall behind my bed. Sorry that you had to come over in the morning, I tell Kaken. He shakes his head. Gotta take care of you, he said with a small smile. I smile back. I try to stand up but get hit with a rush of pain in my head. Hey, take it easy, Kaken said as he ran over and pushed down on my chest, having me lay back down in bed. Why'd I have to get sick? I whispered. Kaken snorts, trying not to laugh at me. A lot of people on campus are sick. I heard must be a virus going around, Kaken said. I nod. Kaminari was sick too. I can stay with you today so you don't get bored or pals out trying to get water, Kaken said. Sitting next to my bed, I smile at him. I was so lucky. I should tell him. Tell me what? Tell me what? Kaken asked me, looking worried. Crap, I must have been muttering again. Nothing, just sick, mutters I say with a weak smile. Kaken glares. You're lying, Kaken said. I shake my head. No, everything's fine.